The Ruthless Billionaire and His Maid, a betrayal that changed everything. Welcome to Alcott Stories, your home for unforgettable tales of love, betrayal, and second chances. Tonight, we're diving deep into a story that will grip your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat. The tale of a ruthless billionaire and his maid, a night that changed everything, and a love that refuses to die. Before we begin, I want to know, where are you watching me from today? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's connect as we journey together through this powerful story. Get ready for a roller coaster of emotions, secrets, and a second chance that might just restore everything lost. Stay tuned, because this is Alcott Stories, where every story touches your soul. Ethan Blackwell stood at the top of his glass and marble empire like a shadow cast over the city, flawless suits, sharp grey eyes colder than winter rain, and a silence that cut deeper than words. The Blackwell estate, a fortress of steel, granite and ruthlessness, echoed with the unspoken rule, never look the boss in the eye unless summoned. The mansion was grand, alive with polished surfaces and lifeless hearts. He didn't speak unless barking orders. He didn't smile unless closing a billion-dollar deal. Love, he'd often say, was a fairy tale for the weak, and he had long since outgrown bedtime stories. The staff moved like ghosts in his presence, their footsteps quiet, their fear louder. But then came Amara Hayes, a young maid with quiet beauty and soulful eyes that held both innocence and storms. She didn't flinch when he passed her in the halls. Her soft "Good morning, sir," slipped through the frosty air like sunlight through a storm cloud. Ethan noticed, and hated that he noticed. Her voice unnerved him, gentle in a way that felt like mercy. "If you've come to flirt, go home. I pay you to clean, not charm," he'd said on her third day. Without glancing up from his tablet, she had only smiled, bowed her head slightly, and replied, "Yes, Mr. Blackwell, I'll be out of your way." No sass, no fear, no submission either. She existed like a calm melody in the noise of his controlled chaos. That bothered him more than any defiance would have. She folded his shirts with care, never rushing, polished his marble counters as if she were coaxing light from stone. Every time he snapped, "You missed a spot," or "Do you always move this slow?" She met him with a warmth so disarming, he felt the edges of himself fraying. One morning, finding his coffee lukewarm, he threw the cup aside with a crash. "How hard is it to do one damn thing right?" he growled. Amara didn't wince. She calmly picked up the broken pieces, the steaming mess soaking her sleeves. "I'll do better," she whispered, not in shame, but with a patience that stunned him. His breath caught, not because of guilt, but because something in her voice reminded him of a place he'd buried deep. Something soft, something human. At night, he'd sometimes catch himself remembering the way she hummed while dusting the library shelves, or how she touched every object with reverence, like the house itself had a soul she was trying to heal. Ethan didn't believe in souls. He believed in control, in power, in contracts and silence. But Amara was not silent. She was music he hadn't asked for, but couldn't stop hearing. And though he would never admit it aloud, something about her chipped at the walls he'd spent years building. She was a whisper in a hurricane, a warmth he didn't know how to hold. And even as he convinced himself she was just a maid, a tool, a presence to ignore, his heart, locked and rusted, began to stir like an engine forgotten. He didn't know it yet, but the ice was cracking. The storm raged outside like a wounded animal, thunder clawing at the sky as rain slammed against the mansion's vast glass walls. Inside, silence reigned, until the front door creaked open and Ethan stumbled in, his tuxedo drenched, his breath thick with expensive scotch, and something far more dangerous, grief he hadn't named. His eyes were clouded, steps uneven as he muttered curses to no one in particular, tossing his coat across the marble floor, ignoring the butler's concerned glance. "I'm fine," he snapped, voice slurred and brittle, before disappearing up the staircase like a storm within a storm. Amara, folding laundry in the guest room, paused as thunder cracked again. She glanced at the clock, past midnight, and instinctively prepared his coffee. As she did every late night, But when she entered his dimly lit room, she felt a chill more profound than weather. The door to the ensuite bathroom was ajar, and over the hum of the rain came a strange sound, water sloshing, irregular, too violent for a bath. "Mr. Blackwell?" she called softly. No answer. Her fingers trembled as she pushed the door open. The sight shattered her. Ethan lay slumped in the oversized tub, his head dipped below the waterline, body limp, breathless. For one breathless moment she froze, then everything moved at once. She rushed in, soaking her dress as she reached into the water, arms trembling as she gripped his shoulders and yanked him up. "No, no, no. Please," she whispered, dragging his unconscious body out of the tub, cradling his head in her lap as water spilled from his mouth. "Breathe! Please breathe," she begged, pressing trembling fingers to his chest, her breath hitching. Panic surged through her like electricity. But she fought it, leaned down, placed her lips over his, and breathed life into him. Once, twice. Her heart beat like thunder in her ears as she pressed, her hands to his chest again. "Ethan," she whispered, voice cracking. "Not sir. You're not Mr. Blackwell, just Ethan." His name had never felt so human. Suddenly he gasped violently, coughing up water as his eyes shot open, wild and disoriented. He blinked up at her, her soaked hair clinging to her cheeks, her hands trembling against his skin. Her lips parted in relief and fear. "You," he rasped, confused, voice barely a whisper. She nodded, tears spilling silently as she tried to steady him. "You almost drowned," she said softly, her voice like velvet on shattered glass. His gaze dropped to where her hand still rested, against his bare chest, her warmth anchoring him, her touch unfamiliar yet comforting. He had never been this close to her, never felt anything this tender, intimate the moment had become. She moved to rise, but his hand, weak but certain, gently caught her wrist. "Stay," he murmured, and it wasn't a command. It was the first thing he had ever said to her that sounded like a request. Her skin was soft, her fingers delicate but firm, not a servant's touch, but something sacred. He didn't speak, just stared as though seeing her for the first time. The alcohol in his blood burned, less than the sensation of her breath, still lingering on his lips. Something cracked open inside him, not just confusion or gratitude, but a hunger for something he'd buried. He wasn't used to being saved, and certainly not by someone who asked for nothing in return. The room was quiet now, except for the rain and their breaths. Amara lowered her gaze, realizing how the rain softened into a steady hush outside, as if the storm itself knew the world inside. Ethan Blackwell's bedroom had shifted. Amara sat still on the floor, her damp dress clinging to her skin, unsure if she'd imagined the way his hand still gently curled around her wrist. Ethan, eyes half-lidded and voice barely more than a breath, whispered again, "Don't go." There was no steel in his tone, no arrogance, just rawness. She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself back beside him, watching as he blinked through the days of alcohol and shock. His fingers slid from her wrist to her palm, holding her hand as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. Neither of them spoke for a long moment, breaths rising and falling in uncertain rhythm. Finally he said, "You saved me," the words trailing like a confession he hadn't known he needed to give. "I thought I didn't matter to anyone." Amara looked at him then, really looked, and saw a man not carved of ice, but of wounds hidden too deep for daylight. She offered a soft, hesitant smile, the kind that didn't ask questions or demand anything. "You matter," she said simply, brushing wet strands of hair from his forehead. The gesture made him close his eyes, as if it physically hurt to be touched so gently. He shifted on the bed, and without thinking, she helped him lean back onto the pillows, adjusting the blankets around him like instinct. Her hands, steady now, moved without fear, smoothing the collar of his shirt, tucking a corner of the blanket near his side. "Why do you care?" he asked, not accusingly, but with a boyish ache beneath the surface. Amara met his gaze and replied, "Because someone should." The silence that followed was thick but not uncomfortable. It held the weight of unspoken truths, of walls beginning to collapse. Ethan's hand drifted up and rested lightly against her wrist again. "Stay a little longer," he murmured, his voice fraying. She nodded, settling onto the edge of the bed beside him, one leg curled beneath her. Her fingers rested just inches from his on the sheets, close enough to feel the warmth without forcing it. "I never let anyone in," he said quietly. "Not since." He stopped as if the past had choked him mid-sentence. Amara didn't press. Instead, she whispered, "You don't have to explain tonight, just rest." He turned his head toward her, studying her face in the dim light, the curve of her cheek, the gentle rise and fall of her breath. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." He said the word slow and heavy, honest. "You make the silence feel safe." She gave a soft laugh, barely audible. "That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me." He smirked, a rare, lopsided flicker of something close to peace. "I'll deny it tomorrow," he said. "I know," she replied, "but I'll still remember it." Their eyes locked, the air between them warm, despite the chill of their soaked clothes. He reached up, brushed his thumb gently over her knuckles, and then, in a moment more honest than anything either had known, he whispered, "I don't want to be this man anymore." The words weren't dramatic. They were quiet, wrecked, and real. She leaned forward slightly, her forehead brushing his, her voice soft as breath. "Then don't be." He closed his eyes, their hands still touching, the storm now only a distant murmur. And for the first time in years, Ethan Blackwell slept with peace in his chest because someone stayed. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of Ethan's bedroom, casting golden lines across the floor as he stirred, awake, not to the blare of alarms or the weight of business calls, but to the memory of warm fingers tangled with his, and a voice that had chased away his nightmares. For the first time in years, his first thought was not of profits or control, but of Amara, the quiet presence, who had turned his coldest night into something human. He found her already awake, arranging flowers in the hallway vase with soft concentration, unaware of his gaze. Instead of retreating into silence, he stepped closer, clearing his throat gently. She turned, surprised, and was met with something she'd never seen before in his eyes, softness. "They're lilies," she said hesitantly. "My mother liked them." He nodded, then said quietly, "They're beautiful. Like you." She blinked, stunned by the gentleness in his voice, the way it didn't scrape or sting, but soothed. From that morning on, something shifted. The shouting stopped. The tension dissolved. Where he once barked orders, he now asked questions about her childhood, her favorite books, what songs made her smile. She answered with guarded laughter, unsure if this was a dream that would soon dissolve. But he was consistent, careful, and persistent in the way only a man trying to earn back his soul could be. They began meeting after hours, quiet escapes into the city disguised as errands. He booked private rooftops under false names, where string lights danced over wine glasses and jazz played low under the stars. "You don't need all this," she once whispered, looking at the expensive view, her hand in his. He replied, "I don't do this for people, Amara. I do this for you." They walked hidden beaches at sunrise, her dress brushing the tide, his jacket draped over her shoulders. He laughed more now, not the sharp kind that mocked, but the real kind that healed. In one quiet moment, as they stood barefoot in the sand, he brushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "I used to think love was a weakness. Now I think, maybe it's the only thing that ever made me strong." She looked at him, heart-pounding, and replied, "Then don't be afraid to feel it." His lips didn't crash into hers like in the movies. Instead, they hovered, uncertain but reverent, as if he was asking permission to fall completely. When he finally kissed her, it was slow, steady, and filled with every apology his pride had swallowed. Behind closed doors, their love grew like something sacred, hidden from the world, but undeniable. In the mornings, he watched her sip coffee from his favorite cup, barefoot in his kitchen like she belonged there. In the evenings, he'd read her poetry he never admitted he liked, just to see her eyes soften. His staff noticed, too, the way he greeted people, the way he no longer walked like a storm cloud. But no one dared ask, and he never explained, because what he had with Amara wasn't for public display. It was for the quiet places in his heart, where nothing had ever bloomed, until now. The evening sky draped itself in hues of soft lavender and amber, a tender dusk settling over the secluded garden estate Ethan had quietly rented for the night. Fairy lights shimmered between tall hedges and overhanging branches like stars too eager to wait for darkness. Amara stood at the heart of it, her fingers grazing the petals of a rose centerpiece, unaware of the life-changing moment about to bloom just steps behind her. Ethan watched her for a long breath, the velvet ring box in his pocket feeling heavier than anything he'd ever carried. His palms, usually so steady with signatures and steel, now trembled with something terrifyingly beautiful: hope. As she turned toward him, surprised to see the violinist begin a soft, romantic piece, he took a quiet step forward, then another, until he was right before her. "What's all this?" she asked, her smile tentative, her voice warm. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly dropped to one knee, the gravel crunching beneath him as the soft gasp escaped her lips. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan," she whispered, but the rest of her voice fled into the silence. "You changed everything," he began, eyes never leaving hers. "You made me believe in mornings, in laughter, in forgiveness, in love. You walked into my world without asking for anything and still gave me everything." The way she looked at him, half in shock, half in overwhelming emotion, made his voice catch for a moment. "I used to think I needed no one. Now I can't imagine waking up a single day without you beside me. Not just in my house, but in my life, as my wife." The ring, a simple diamond set in white gold, glinted under the lights as he opened the box. "Amara Hayes, will you marry me?" She blinked, tears already spilling onto her cheeks, her hands trembling. I'm just a maid," she stammered. "Not to me," he said, rising slowly, taking her hand. "You're the woman who taught a ruthless man how to love." Her breath hitched, and then, almost in a sob, she said, "Yes, yes, Ethan, 1,000 times, yes." He pulled her close as applause echoed from hidden staff, who had witnessed the moment from afar, tears in their eyes too. That night, the world of cold stone and power melted away into something purely human. But the news didn't stay quiet for long. Within days, headlines flooded every outlet. "Billionaire marries Maid." Ethan Blackwell's shocking engagement, from housekeeper to heiress. Paparazzi circled like vultures. Cameras waited outside restaurants. Amara's name trended globally, but Ethan never flinched. He tightened security, shut down interviews, and made it clear: she is mine, and she is off limits. The wedding happened weeks later, not in a ballroom, but in a sunlit chapel by the sea. No press, no glitz, just vows whispered with shaking hands and eyes that saw only each other. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Ethan whispered, "This isn't just love, this is forever." And Amara, tears still dancing down her cheeks, answered, "I was always yours, even when you didn't see me." The kiss that sealed their promise was tender, reverent, and true, the beginning of a chapter no headline could ever fully capture. The scent of salt water still lingered in the corners of their honeymoon home, laughter echoing faintly in the spaces where joy had bloomed just weeks ago. Amara folded laundry near the open window, her wedding ring catching the golden light as waves murmured outside. Inside, peace wrapped itself around her like a warm shawl, until Ethan walked in with a tension in his jaw she hadn't seen in months. He tossed his phone on the marble counter, the screen briefly flashing a name that chilled her: Lillian Moore, the woman Amara had only heard about in fragmented conversations. The socialite ex-fiancée from Ethan's carefully curated past. "She wants a meeting," he said flatly. Amara met his gaze. "Why?" His silence told her more than words ever could. Days later, at a private board charity gala, Lillian appeared like a ghost wrapped in silk. Blonde, poised, with a voice like warm poison, she smiled at Ethan with rehearsed familiarity. "I see you've changed," she purred, eyes flicking to Amara like she was a misplaced ornament. "Or maybe settled." Her words sliced, laced in civility. Behind closed doors, she didn't hesitate. "Ethan marrying your maid? That's cute, but you belong at the top and you know it." She spoke to the version of him that once believed love was a weakness, and worse, that status was strength. She planted questions in board members' ears. Can a maid be a suitable partner for a billionaire CEO? What does that say about the brand? Ethan tried to shield Amara from it, but the cracks widened. Invitations dried up. Investors raised brows. The media turned cruel. "This is hurting the company," someone whispered in a closed-door meeting. Amara noticed the shift. Ethan's distance, the return of his late nights, the way he avoided her eyes during dinner. Still, she held his hand every chance she could, hoping love would anchor him again. Then one morning everything shattered. She came downstairs to find a crisp envelope on the table, not a single word spoken between them. Divorce papers, no explanation, no goodbye. Her breath left her in pieces. "Ethan?" She called out, voice trembling, but he was already gone. She read the papers with hands that had once saved his life, now shaking with disbelief. Irreconcilable differences. The ink bled through her tears. He didn't even face her, didn't even fight. He simply erased her. In that moment, the mansion turned cold again. She packed quietly, her heart breaking with every step, retracing the path where love once lived. Outside, reporters swarmed. "The billionaire bachelor is back." Cameras flashed. Questions flew. But no one saw the woman inside the cab, staring out the window, her world unraveling in silence. Ethan stood at his office window that night, Lillian's perfume still lingering in the air, but something hollow throbbed in his chest. He told himself it was relief. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "You just destroyed the only real thing you ever had." The echo of the slammed door lingered longer than Amara's footsteps down the grand staircase, a painful reminder that the life she had dared to dream of was now crumbling around her. Despite the storm raging inside, she gathered every shard of her shattered pride and walked away with quiet strength, refusing to let bitterness define her. The cameras no longer chased her, the whispers faded, and she slipped out of the world that had celebrated her rise only to revel in her fall. In the small apartment she now called home, surrounded by the hum of ordinary life, Amara found solace in simplicity. The scent of fresh coffee in the morning, the soft pages of her favorite book, the warmth of a neighbor's smile. She rebuilt herself piece by piece, never forgetting the love she once held, but refusing to be broken by it. Meanwhile, Ethan's world, once illuminated by the light of Amara's presence, descended into shadows. Lillian, with her flawless smile and sharp eyes, seemed to fill the spaces Amara left behind, but beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Her demands grew louder, her greed more blatant, as if the ring on her finger was a symbol of conquest rather than love. Board meetings were dominated by her voice, but not with ideas, with ultimatums, and ultimatums that left Ethan exhausted and silent. Their home, once a refuge of shared dreams, became a cold battlefield where every word was calculated and every glance a weapon. Late at night, Ethan found himself staring out of his penthouse window, the city lights blurring into tears he refused to shed. Memories of Amara haunted him, the way her laughter filled rooms, the gentle touch that once healed his broken soul, the quiet strength that never wavered even in his darkest hours. He could feel the emptiness growing, a hollow ache beneath his ruthless exterior, a reminder of the love he had cast aside in favor of appearances. Friends and colleagues noticed the change. The fire in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a weariness that no amount of success could mask. In rare moments alone he whispered her name, a prayer or a plea, unsure which. But the past, like a shadow, loomed relentlessly, and no matter how tightly he gripped the reins of power, the ghost of Amara's love lingered, haunting every silent room, every quiet moment, reminding him of what he had lost and what he might never regain. 2 years had passed in a blur of cold boardrooms and empty nights, the weight of Ethan's regrets pressing heavier with every dawn. But nothing prepared him for the night. His carefully constructed life shattered once again. It started with a whisper, a private message, an anonymous tip, something that set his heart pounding with suspicion. Reluctantly, he confronted the woman who had once promised him forever. only to reveal a truth far more bitter than he imagined. Lillian was carrying another man's child, a secret she had hidden beneath layers of lies and ambition, using him as a stepping stone to climb higher in a world that valued wealth above loyalty. Rage burned through Ethan's veins, scorching every last thread of trust he had left. The divorce was swift, colder even than the first, a silent severance of chains that had bound him to a hollow marriage. Alone in his sprawling mansion, surrounded by luxuries that suddenly felt like tombstones, Ethan was left with nothing but the haunting echo of betrayal. For weeks, he drifted in a fog of despair and self-loathing, questioning every choice, every moment he had let love slip through his fingers. Then, one evening, a flicker of hope pierced the gloom. A news report on the television caught his attention. There, in the glow of the screen, was Amara. No longer the shy maid, she had blossomed into a remarkable woman, a small business owner whose foundation was dedicated to empowering underprivileged women, lifting them out of hardship with compassion and strength. Her smile radiated warmth and determination, a stark contrast to the coldness he felt consuming him. The world was watching her rise, admiring her courage, her unwavering spirit, and Ethan realized, with a painful clarity, that the woman he had lost was not just surviving, she was thriving. The news settled deep in his heart, a bittersweet reminder of everything he had thrown away and the chance at redemption he desperately longed for. As the screen faded to black, Ethan whispered her name into the silence, a vow forming in his shattered soul. I will find you again. I will make this right. The road ahead was uncertain, littered with mistakes and heartbreak, but beneath it all, a fragile hope flickered. The possibility of a second chance, of love reborn from the ashes of betrayal. After 2 long years of searching through the tangled maze of his own mistakes and regrets, Ethan finally found her, not as the fragile, timid woman he once knew, but radiant, strong, and glowing with a confidence born from hardship and resilience. The moment he saw Amara's smile light up the room, a flood of memories crashed over him, each one a reminder of what he had lost and what he desperately wanted to reclaim. His knees hit the ground before he could stop himself, his voice cracking with the weight of his sorrow as he whispered, I'm sorry, Amara, I was blind. Please, give me a second chance. But her eyes, once soft and forgiving, now held a guarded chill, a reflection of the pain he had caused. And she met his plea with silence. She reminded him gently but firmly of the night spent alone, the betrayal, the broken promises that had scarred her heart deeper than he had ever realized. Yet beneath her coldness flickered a flicker of something else, a cautious hope. Fragile but real, determined to prove that his remorse was more than empty words, Ethan began to show his regret in quiet, meaningful ways. He supported her foundation anonymously, ensuring that the women she helped had the resources they needed to build better lives. He visited the community center she had built with her own hands, offering his presence without expectation, allowing her to see the sincerity in his actions rather than just hear it in his words. Slowly, as days turned into weeks, Ethan spent time beside Amara, not demanding forgiveness, but patiently earning her trust, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of vulnerability. Their conversations, once guarded, began to flow with honesty and warmth. He learned about her struggles and triumphs, the dreams she still held close, and the wounds that hadn't yet healed. Through it all, Amara felt the walls around her heart begin to soften, not because of grand gestures or promises, but because Ethan showed up, truly showed up, as a man willing to face his flaws and fight for the love he almost destroyed. Their bond, rebuilt with care and courage, grew stronger, weaving a tapestry of second chances, healing and the quiet, powerful possibility that love could indeed rise again from the ashes. Months slipped by like gentle tides, each day weaving threads of healing and hope between Ethan and Amara, their hearts cautiously mending the fragile cracks left by years of pain and betrayal. Amara's forgiveness did not come easily. It was earned through Ethan's unwavering presence, his silent promises reflected in every thoughtful gesture, every moment spent listening without judgment, every selfless act that spoke louder than words. Their bond, once broken and battered, now blossomed in the quiet spaces of trust rebuilt, strengthened by the trials they had endured and the love that refused to die. One evening, beneath a sky sprinkled with stars and wrapped in the soft glow of garden, fairy lights, the same magical place where Ethan had first dared to dream of forever, he took her hands in his, eyes searching hers with a tenderness that held all the weight of his journey. His voice was steady, carrying a depth of emotion that made her heart ache and swell simultaneously. "Amara," he whispered, "I'm not just asking for your love again. I'm asking for redemption, for a chance to prove that the man I was lost in the past is gone, and the man before you now lives only for you." The air between them shimmered with a sacred promise, and in that moment, Amara's guarded heart opened fully, blooming like a rare flower that had long awaited the warmth of genuine care. She smiled, a smile filled with tears, hope, and the courage to believe in their future, and said, "Yes, Ethan, with all my heart." Their wedding was a quiet, intimate celebration, stripped of extravagance but overflowing with joy, laughter, and the quiet power of a love reborn. Friends and family witnessed the union of two souls who had weathered storms and found their way back to one another, stronger and more connected than ever. The ceremony was a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the magic that happens when two imperfect people choose to grow together. As the evening settled into a gentle hush and the stars whispered their blessings, Ethan held Amara close, his lips brushing softly against her forehead, as he whispered words that carried the full weight of his transformation and devotion. "I thought life was beautiful without love, but you made me see what beauty truly is." In her eyes he found home, peace, and the forever they had both fought so hard to claim. Together, they stepped into a future bathed in light, where every heartbeat was a promise and every breath a testament to a love that would endure forever and always.